Hi, it's Bumble. Welcome back to my channel. So, my thoughts on this are pretty much how I expected, unfortunately. That it was going to be like sort of funny, but just okay, and that the first one's better. Sorry for hearing any squeaky noises. I'm just trying to get comfy in my chair for this. Like there was some stuff I found kind of funny. And I did like that Wayne and Garth were together for more of the movie, but it was just okay. I'm fine with having it on DVD though. I mean, I kind of don't have a choice because the DVD has like the first one and the second one in it. But I definitely like the first one better. But I think this one is still worth a watch anyway. And it is nice that it's made a year after the first one, so it's not like, sometimes the sequel's made a bit later and the actors look older or something. It picks up like kind of where the last one left off in that sense. So instead of being in, because it takes place like a year after the first one, like in universe. So instead of having their show in a basement, they have their show in an abandoned Acme doll factory. So there's always a bunch of like Cupid dolls in the background and like doll parts in the background where they're doing their Wayne's World show, which is kind of funny. The Wayne's World show, they don't really do it as much in this movie compared to the first one, but it's pretty much because the plot of this is that Wayne has this dream where he meets Jim Morrison's ghost in a desert, and Jim Morrison tells him, kind of like in Field of Dreams, that if you do this, they will come. But in this, it's instead of building the baseball field, it's you have to have a concert, Wayne. If you have a concert and you get all these musicians booked, they're gonna come, and that's Wayne's whole goal in the movie. Well, it's that, and also he's trying to get back together with Cassandra because he ends up with he's like still dating Cassandra. You do get to see her a bit, but then Christopher Walken is also in this movie. Um, which I thought his character was going to be like a little more interesting. His character felt kind of generic, where he's this guy that's helping produce Cassandra's um, new album or something, or she's gonna have an album, and she replaced all her band members. Now she have all these other people you don't really get to see, and she ends up together with like Christopher Walken's character, and Wayne breaks up with her and then has to like try to get her back, and that's kind of more the focus on like the second half of the movie. But it's kind of like meh on that part. I just wish they had him play like kind of a more like you have Christopher Walken for this movie. I kind of just wish they had him play more of an interesting character. Um, he's just kind of there, really. But I found Wayne's stuff more interesting when he was like with Garth trying to recruit bands for this event. He calls it Wayne Stock. And they get like a lot of musicians for this. Like Aerosmith is the big one. They go to an Aerosmith concert at the beginning. So that's pretty cool. That's also where they have the joke again of the we're not worthy, but it doesn't really feel as funny as it did in the first movie. They go to the donut place immediately, and I got excited. The guy that owns the donut store is in the movie, which is great. But it's like later in the movie. I got so excited when he appeared on screen. But they go to the donut place through like a drive through, and for some reason the drive through has a giant animatronic head of the owner with the like the little loudspeaker and stuff that you hear the orders through, like inside of the animatronic head. Like it's kind of a cool idea, but it felt kind of weird. I like that they do this thing where Wayne and Garth try to purposely mess up their order, and then the person in the headset that's listening recites it back to them perfectly, which feels kind of funny because like I used to work in a drive-through and sometimes I had a hard time like understanding people, and it could be very fast paced. I mean, they order in the middle of the night, so there's not really many customers. So the fact that the person on the other end isn't annoyed with what they're doing and recites the order back to them perfectly wouldn't be me. But when they go to the Aerosmith concert, it's pretty cool. There's a part where they're like crowd surfing and stuff. That looked pretty fun. Heather Locklear is in this movie. She plays a character I think named Honey Hornet, which sounds like it would be like a Bond girl like innuendo name or something. But her character is like very horny for Garth. They end up actually going on a date and stuff, and she's like super duper into him and saying how funny he is, and Garth is just typical Garth awkwardness. But they end up getting together. That was kind of a funny scene. I was actually surprised you even get to see their date at all, because towards the beginning of the movie they meet at a laundromat, and she says, "Oh, let's have dinner sometime." And I thought it was just gonna be like, okay, he's gonna like end up with her at the end, but no, you get to see their full on date and everything. They have this joke. you know how sometimes there's like car chase scenes and stuff where they'll crash into like giant panes of glass or into the back of a truck. They have that joke, but they do it differently where instead of having those things happen, instead they meet a bunch of people who um they have like a truck that has watermelons and a truck for chickens, and they meet these two guys where their entire job is carry a giant window back and forth every few minutes, and you could tell from all those things you're thinking like, okay, it's going to set up this joke for later or whatever. These, you know exactly what kind of joke's going to come. And the characters even mention about it as well. Wayne's like, "Oh, this will probably have a big payoff later." And I just expected it. But no, that turns out to be the entire joke of you have these things to set up a joke for later, but then it doesn't actually come. They don't ever encounter these objects again, which I feel like is a little disappointing, but makes it funnier. But I'm so used to seeing those kind of jokes. I've just of like a car chase where they're crashing into all these kind of things, but I've never seen it where the joke instead is this, where it's like setting up these objects for like an obvious gag. I think that was actually kind of a cool way to do it, honestly. What else? They end up going to England, and I like how their plane is obviously a miniature and it's on a string. And then when they're in all these landmarks, you don't get to see Wayne and Garth's faces. It's just people dressed like them, and you get to see like behind them and whatever. And then you get to see the donut guy, and he just has the one scene, that's it, but he says something about like, "Oh, you guys are putting on a concert. That's really cool. People need distractions nowadays." And then he says, "I wish someone would block out the voices in my head for 5 minutes screaming, 'Why did they come to me to die?'" And then it just goes to the next scene. Wayne's just like, "Okay." And then it goes to the next scene, but I like the donut guy. It's funny. And then they have a Jurassic Park reference as well, where it's like in the first movie with the glass of water moving and stuff, and it's raining. And then they did actually have a dinosaur that was outside their car. And then I like when it shows the next shot of the outside of the car itself. The dinosaur is nowhere to be seen, as if they like hallucinated it or something. There's a part when Garth is on his date, and the person he's with asks, "Would you um or no, when she's gonna ask him to dinner, she says like, "Would you like to have dinner with me sometime, or would you like to have dinner some night?" And he just says, "I have dinner every night." He's just he's so oblivious. I love him. Um, Wayne gets to meet Cassandra's dad. His name is Jeff. They end up having a conversation in Cantonese, and then they do this thing, because it has the English subtitles like last time, where instead they end up getting dubbed over and the subtitles change to yellow, but the people dubbing them over sound completely different and kind of a little monotone. And that was kind of funny. But then I noticed that there's a scene where Jeff appears later on. He's like on a phone call with Wayne, and he's dubbed over. Like they never have him speaking normally, like how he did at the beginning, where it's like his own voice and not dubbed over, like for the rest of the movie for some reason. And then they end up getting into a fight, and their fight's a little over the top, but kind of fun. They have swords at one point. It's like very silly. Oh yeah, they brought Chris Farley back for this, where he's playing this like guy that's training to be a roadie for the Wayne Stock event, and the way his character sounds like a bit more like the kind of character he would play on SNL. They also have Tim Meadows for this as well. He ends up playing Sammy Davis Jr., who's also in the dream that I guess Wayne is having dreams about all these musicians who've passed away and stuff. But it's cool to see him in this too. That's kind of the fun thing with SNL movies, where they'll usually have people that were also cast members in SNL playing like side characters and stuff. So that ends up being kind of fun. Uh, there's a part where there's a bunch of guys that have to do roadie training. I thought that part was going to be funnier, but not really. There's a part when Wayne is spying on Cassandra. It's like him and his group, but you only see Wayne at first, and he's up on this like electrical pole or something, and he's like dressed in a certain way to like fit in with what he's trying to do as his disguise. I don't remember what the costume is. And you think like, oh, okay, that makes sense. He's in disguise for this. And then you get to see him and the rest of the group, and they walk into this like bar or something, and you realize it's a gay bar, and you realize they're dressed as oh gosh, I can't remember the name of the group, but they do the song YMCA. It's like very specific, like costumes and stuff, and they're dressed for that, and you realize what's gonna happen. And they do the song YMCA, and that was pretty fun. Like I didn't even think about it when I saw Wayne's costume because like he was in disguise, and then you see the other costumes and you like immediately put it together and stuff. I like that Garth's hockey stick because him and Wayne play hockey every once in a while. Has a doll head on the top, but the doll has glasses and long blonde hair, and it kind of looks like Garth, which probably has to do with them recording their show in, the abandoned doll factory or whatever. But that also just sounds like something Garth would do anyway. And then there's this guy who's on the radio, and the characters mention that he has a really cool sounding voice, and he's a guy known as Handsome Dan, and I assumed that meant they were gonna meet him later, and they do, and he's just like an average looking guy, which I found kind of funny. Um, with this movie, it's interesting how with the first one, it went from Garth being like very socially awkward and always talking to the camera, and everyone talking to Wayne and kind of just ignoring Garth. And then in this movie, it's that Garth has a girlfriend. He doesn't really talk to the camera much. He's still like a little awkward, but not as much as in the first movie. And he actually like hangs out with people. And then in this one, no one really wants to like hang around Wayne. I kind of like that it's a bit flip flopped with this. They do still talk to the camera in this movie, but it's not really as often, and it's mostly Wayne. But I think that worked because if they did it like too much in this one too, I feel like it wouldn't really be as funny. But I feel like it was something that was funny in the first movie, so I am glad they kind of tone it down a bit. And then Garth seems like he breaks up with his girlfriend or something because it's revealed she has a husband and she has a gun in her bag, and she's like, Garth, I think you should kill my husband, but you also shouldn't, and whatever. And then it seems like Garth hooks up with this girl um, at the end of the movie that just looks like a gender swapped version of him or something. It's kind of weird. But I feel like that kind of fits. I don't know. And then Cassandra is getting married to Christopher Walken's character. So then Wayne and Garth are separated, where Wayne is trying to crash her wedding, and Garth has to like lead the start of like Wayne Stock or whatever. And I like how it ends up kind of parodying the Graduate a bit, where it's the church from the Graduate, and they have the scene, except it's Wayne this time, and he's against that huge window, and he's trying to stop her from getting married, and then he realizes he's at the wrong wedding, and it goes and shows that it's the church that's like across the street or something. um, and then you and I thought that was cool because on the way to driving to that wedding, I heard the song, Mrs. Robinson, which is from that movie, and I thought, oh, cool, I like that song. And then the fact that it kind of was foreshadowing, okay, they're going to do a reference to The Graduate was kind of cool. And then when they're leaving the wedding, they have a rock version of the song. And then they get on a bus, and I was honestly expecting it to continue where, at the ending of I'm going to spoil the ending of The Graduate here. They get on a bus, and it's the two main characters in The Graduate, and they just sit there at the back of the bus, and they don't say anything, and you see their happy ending isn't really as happy. I thought they were gonna do like kind of a joke on that, but they just get on a bus and then it cuts to them at Wayne Stock. But I feel like it was fine. It was like enough with the references and stuff. Um, and then Garth also ends up getting taken to the Dream Desert and getting to meet Jim Morrison, which was kind of funny. And they're asking him like, "Hey, we tried to get all these bands. No one's showing up. You said they would show up." And then Jim Morrison's just like, yeah, I just said that so you would try to do something with your life, Wayne, and realize you didn't need to do all that to win back Cassandra. Good luck or whatever. And it's just like, oh, okay. But then the bands, well, actually, no, they end up doing the ending from Thelma and Louise instead, where they're even dressed up as the characters. Um, and I keep having to spoil all these other movie endings, but like that's how the references are going. They're dressed up as I'm gonna spoil it. They're dressed up as Thelma and Louise. I'm not sure if they completely had the costumes right, but like mostly. And then they because I remember one of them wearing like a denim jacket. It's been a bit since I've seen the movie, and they're in their car, and then they go off the cliff, and then they're like, no, let's just do the happy ending. So then all the bands show up, and the movie ends. But you do get to hear some of them perform, including in the credits. That was kind of cool. And then I was fast forwarding to get through the end of the credits and stuff so I could take out the DVD. And then I saw there was one more scene after the credits, but I fast forwarded so fast that it actually didn't let me go backwards anymore, and then the DVD stopped, and I was like, oh man. And I didn't want to go through the DVD menu. So yeah, there is some kind of scene after the credits, but I didn't know what it was. I don't think I'll like check it out online or anything. I'm just kind of bringing that to your attention. But yeah, that's pretty much my thoughts on this. I know I went like a little fast, but it's mostly because my phone's currently at 12% and I need to go eat lunch. But yeah, this was, it was still kind of fun. I'd definitely say, in my opinion, the first movie's better, but I'd still recommend watching this. Like, if you've seen the first movie already, I think you should check out this one at least once, because it does have a lot of funny jokes and stuff. I like that they try to do stuff a little differently with the main characters. There's just some critiques I have, like with Christopher Walken's character. I feel like you don't really get to see as much as Cassandra either. She doesn't really feel as much of like her own character in this compared to the first one. She's just someone that like is the love interest character that Wayne's trying to win back, so it doesn't really feel as fun. I do like that you get to meet her dad though, and he seems pretty cool. Um, and I like them trying to do Wayne stock. I do kind of miss them doing their TV show because that was like the whole thing with the, original sketches in SNL. But the first movie was kind of more about their show, so I guess it evens out. It is nice they try to do something different for the sequel. But yeah, that's pretty much my thoughts on it. I still had a good. I don't think I'll watch it again, but I still had a good time. I'd recommend it to watch it at least once. But yeah, thanks for watching. Bye bye.